Good afternoon, Professor. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. On this occasion, we are gathered here to the meeting to conduct an interview with a psychology professional. Our team is made up of Luciana Altamirano, Arturo Gayosa, and Alan Angulo Vasquez. Well, on this occasion, we have the participation of Magister Abigail Aponte, who is a teaching researcher of the Psychosocial Research Group Praxis. She holds a degree in psychology and a postgraduate degree in psychosocial and community intervention. With experience in design, planning, execution, and organization of projects, social and educational programs with a gender focus. She is also a researcher and university lecturer in courses such as social psychology, community psychology, thesis seminar, and intervention programs applied to psychology. She is also a researcher and senior consultant in diagnosing gender gaps, masculinities, and communities, especially in the agro-productive and ecotourism context, with experience in intervention and diagnostics. She focuses on the Peruvian jungle. The Magister holds a specialization Magister in Community Psychosocial Intervention from the Autonomous University of Madrid, Spain.
I will start today by thanking my student Alan. He contacted me to answer some questions he has prepared within the framework of a university project on professional ethics in organizational and educational psychology. For me, as a teacher and psychologist, it is very valuable to reflect on this topic, isn't it? Because ethics is a complement to our profession and to all professions. But in psychology, I think ethics is the backbone of the career.
Colleague Luciana.
Thank you very much, colleague Alan. On this occasion, my licensed professional, we will conduct an interview within the framework of a university project on professional ethics in organizational and educational psychology. The objective of this interview is to learn about the perspective and experience of a professional psychologist, maintaining an exclusive focus on professional ethics. Likewise, professional ethics in organizational and educational psychology, we will discuss the fundamental ethical principles.
I hand over to my colleague Alan.
Thank you very much, Luciana. Now, we will continue with the round of questions. Licentiate Aponte, which do you consider to be the ethical principles that guide your professional practice in the organizational and educational fields?
In my professional practice, both in the organizational and educational fields, I have always been guided by essential principles that I consider fundamental, mainly respect. The respect for the dignity of the people we work with, the professional responsibility, competence, integrity, and justice. Respect for me implies recognizing in each collaborator, each employee, or each student that in principle they are a subject of rights, right? They are not a resource nor a number. They are a person with emotions, with their own thoughts. Professional responsibility, I mean that we must have, I have this awareness of the impact I can have as a psychologist and the impact I can have on the decisions of people regarding their career path or academic trajectory, if we refer to the educational field. By professional responsibility, I mean that we must have, I have this awareness of the impact I can have as a psychologist and the impact I can have on the decisions of people regarding their career path or academic trajectory, if we refer to the educational field. On the other hand, competence requires me as a teacher and as an organizational psychologist constant updating, right? It demands of me as a teacher and as an organizational psychologist constant updating and also acting within my professional limits. Justice, I mentioned, is something that guides me. In some way, it helps me myself to be able to offer or guarantee processes in labor and educational settings. Favoritism without discrimination.
Thank you, Licentiate, for the answer. Next, we are going to talk about confidentiality in organizational and educational contexts. For this, then, Licentiate Aponte, how do you handle the confidentiality of the psychological information of employees and students? And in what situations could it be ethically compromised?
Regarding confidentiality in the organizational and educational context, well, the confidentiality is the central axis of the profession. I always explain from the beginning the scope, the limits, and the informed consent that everyone must, as psychologists, provide. In organization, for example, if I conduct an evaluation, I do not reveal intimate information of the evaluated person, but rather the technical conclusions relevant to the position. In the educational field, on the other hand, I protect emotional information or family information of the student, right? Sharing only what is necessary or strictly to do with pedagogical purposes. In fact, in the educational field, student information is highly protected, and only what is relevant or strictly necessary is used for pedagogical or academic purposes. Now, confidentiality can sometimes be compromised when there is a risk to the life or integrity of the person or third parties. This is regulated by a legal framework. Or situations of violence or suicidal ideation, for example. In those cases, the duty is to protect. That is, the duty to protect takes precedence over confidentiality. So, following institutional protocols, we have to act, right?
Thank you very much, licensed professional. Now, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Luciana.
Thank you very much, colleague. Continuing with the questions and the technical use of psychological tests, my licensed professional, what ethical criteria do you apply in the use of selection and interpretation of psychological tests in organizational and educational contexts?
Well, in this case, I apply criteria of validity, reliability, and relevance in the cultural sense, right? And the objective, not the specific purpose, is not to apply routine tests, but tests that truly respond to a concrete need, to a specific objective. Also, as you already know, I imagine, no result is interpreted in isolation. It is always integrated with the interview, the context, and something fundamental is the feedback given. The feedback we provide must be clear, respectful, and we also cannot label ourselves, because that can cause stigmatization.
Thank you very much. Regarding the ethical dilemma in practice, have you ever encountered an ethical dilemma in your professional work in these contexts? And how have you proceeded to resolve it, my colleague?
About ethical dilemmas, right? That arise in practice, right? Yes, I have faced some dilemmas, especially when there have been some institutional clarifications, right? To reveal information or favor certain decisions, right? In those cases, I refer somewhat to the principle of no harm and the code of ethics, right? I evaluated the situation carefully. If it is necessary to resign my role as a teacher, I evaluated it a lot and the situation. If it is necessary to step down, I would do so as a professional. I have done so, or I request supervision if I suddenly feel a bit overwhelmed, a bit somehow trapped in a situation like that, right? Ethics often involves that, maintaining a firm stance as well, even when it is uncomfortable to do so, or when we might actually risk no longer working at the company.
Okay, very interesting answer. Not. Thank you very much. Now, I will give the floor to my colleague Arturo. Dave.
Good afternoon. We continue with the interview. Tell us, how do you consult and apply the professional code of ethics in your daily work within organizations and educational institutions?
Code of ethics is the Bible. It is not the permanent guide. I do consult it especially, not every day, but especially in complex situations, conflicts of interest, boundaries of my role, confidentiality, or interventions in very sensitive cases. Now, it is not a document to be reviewed only in case of a breach, but it should be seen as a small manual, as I say, within a framework that guides daily decision making within organizations or educational institutions.
Thank you, Sylvie. And finally, how do you protect psychological information and the personal data of a person you work with?
Some concrete measures I can share are that the files I can store digitally have protection with codes, with secure passwords. I also protected platforms for virtual sessions with restricted access to sensitive information, right? Something, well, like I do, I collect a lot of extremely important, necessary data, right? The intervention, right? In that way, I feel that I also protect the information, right? I always remember something I learned a long time ago when I was an undergrad, that not only was protecting information a legal obligation, but it was also an act of professional respect. So that's how I work, and I hope this helps with your course. And well, we'll be seeing each other.
Very well. Let's remember that the information presented is relevant both for the organizational field and for the educational field, since it strengthens the understanding of ethical practice in psychological work and highlights the importance of acting with responsibility, commitment, and professionalism in every context of the intervention. Dr. Aponte, thank you very much for your participation in this great interview.